Go ahead, guys. Do you want me to just start or?
Mayor Suarez, because he said that if you can't make the candidates who can't make the debate stage, you just drop out. What do you say to that?
I've sort of always agreed with that. You know what I mean? I agree that if you can't meet the minimum thresholds, you shouldn't be trying to take time and volume away from people that do. I think the minimum threshold I've said is fair. One of the things that I do think is a bit unfair is that there's a lot of polls that I haven't been in. And it's a disadvantage when you're a relatively unknown candidate. When you see the reaction that the crowd has and the people have when they listen to me, you know that if you're given an opportunity to speak at a national level, that you're going to be able to connect and that you're going to be able to grow. So it's kind of a chicken or an egg problem. And so we're doing everything we can over the next 10 days to get there. We're having constant conversations with the RNC about, counting certain polls. And we're hoping that they're generous and flexible because of some of the obstacles that we've had to encounter, including not being included in at least a third of the polls that have been put out.
If you don't make the debate stage, you end your campaign.
I feel confident that I'm going to make the debate stage over the next 10 days, and I'll decide it then. But I have said that, I don't think candidates should just sort of linger around if they don't have a credible path.
Mayor Suarez, if you're having trouble making the debate stage now, what's the pathway to victory going forward?
It's easy. It's incremental. So first you got to get to it. Sometimes the hardest part is sort of the first increment, right? Because you're literally starting from zero. So I think getting to the debate stage, you're going to be on equal footing with, let's say, 9 other candidates. If I'm the 9th person, 8 other candidates. And I think the American people have a first opportunity to listen to me, to hear my voice, to hear my ideas, to hear about my record and my vision. And I always felt that that's compelling. And so that's my job is to connect. And if I do, I think I'll come out of that debate already making the next debate threshold, which is 3%. Because I don't think you can, sort of gimmick your way there. I think you have to at some point perform, and people have to buy into your message.
And just to follow up, what's your strategy should you make the debate stage?
Just to be myself, to be authentic. To talk about who I am, my background, to talk about what we've accomplished and how we can scale that nationally to create a generation of American prosperity and freedom. And then focus on what are the big problems that I think I can solve uniquely because of what I've done and because I want to unify this country. I don't think enough of the candidates are talking about how do we bring this country together. I've done that in my city. I've transformed my city from a +30 for Democrats to a +10 for Republicans. I think I can get young voters that we lost to Biden by 26 points. And I know that we can get Hispanics, which are 20% undecided, 60 million people in this country when presidential races are being decided by 100,000 votes or less.
Explain your pitch to Iowans who say, great, you're a mayor from South Florida.
Yeah.
How could you possibly relate and understand to our issues here on a national scale?
Well, I think the big issues on a national scale are the deficit, right, and the impact of that, which is increasing inflation, which is hurting every single day people who are starting to go to school now are having to pay more for school supplies or having a hard time making ends meet, and then higher interest rates, right, because the Fed is trying to counteract the inflation, so they're increasing interest rates. So the poor in our community and those that are in the middle class are just struggling on both sides. I'm the only candidate in the field, the only one, and I think Iowans are smart enough to do their due diligence, and they always do. That's why it's so great that they're first in the nation. I'm the only candidate that's actually cut a public sector budget by 20%, which is the exact amount that we have to cut the federal budget to balance it. While the federal budget was getting a credit downgrading, we in the city got a credit upgrading by S&P. They got downgraded by Fitch. We got upgraded by S&P to the highest credit rating ever. So it's a complete juxtaposition what I've done there. In terms of creating jobs, when you're successful at creating high-paying jobs, every city in America wants that. And 85% of the population of America is in American cities. 91% of the GDP produced by this country is produced by people who live in American cities and towns. So that is a model and a recipe for success for American generational prosperity. And that's the story that I want to tell. And I think that will resonate with Iowans. They were the first ones that put me on the map, on the threshold. So I'm very grateful. I will always be.
Mayor, what do you think about the special counsel being appointed just a few minutes ago to investigate Hunter Biden?
Oh, I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked by that at all. I think that there's a perception among Republicans that I talk to that there's a two-tiered system. So I think that it's gonna be welcoming, that they feel that there's gonna be hopefully a transparent and deep investigation, just like the Democrats have sought to do on the other side. But for me personally, I really want to get beyond that. I want to get to a place where we're focusing on all of your prosperity. How do we make this country do better for a generation? And I don't think continuously litigating what's happened in the past is going to create prosperity for the future.
On the right and the left.
Correct. That's right.
Governor DeSantis said yesterday he'd be willing to use drone strikes on cartels within Mexico to fight fentanyl. Do you agree with that statement? Also, do you agree with the governor removing Medico Worrell in Orlando?
Two separate questions. I think that we're going to have a new president of Mexico by the time that the new president of the United States is elected. And I think we should have U.S.-Mexico collaboration and cooperation similar to what we had with Colombia in the 80s. If you remember Miami in the 80s, it was 300 and something homicides, right? So the cartels in Colombia were impacting American cities like mine. I do believe that if we can have cooperation with Mexico, we should take on the cartels. We should use economic resources. We should help them with their energy issues. And frankly, we should start depowering China, where we're sending them $500 billion of our wealth in terms of a trade deficit, nearshoring more of our supply chain, and creating prosperity, which depressurizes immigration. I think if we do all those three things, we're going to have a more prosperous Mexico, and we're going to have a country in the United States that's at less risk of the cartels.
Without military action, without drone strikes?
Well, whatever military action is needed is going to be done in conjunction with Mexico, right? Like I said, we had guerrillas. We sent in special forces into Colombia. So that was 30 years ago, right? Whatever the military tactics of today and tomorrow are with Mexico's government, that's what there will be.
And removing Worrell, removing the...
Look, I think when you have a prosecutor that's not prosecuting 40+% of violent crime, that's a major problem. In Miami, I can tell you, and actually Ashley Moody, who was the Attorney General, who I heard in the press conference, she was juxtaposing it with Dade County, where the prosecutor in Dade County is significantly tougher, right? There's a huge problem in American cities right now, which is, and it affects all cities, right? This concept of not imposing the law, not holding people accountable. And it's creating lawlessness. We're seeing it. People go into supermarkets and just take things at will. And it's causing a degradation where we're seeing cities continue to be violent, and it affects everybody, right? It affects people's quality of life. In our city, we've taken a pro-law enforcement stance. Last year, we had the lowest per capita homicide rate since 1964. This year, we're 37% below last year's number. When you compare it to Chicago, and we're different. It's a much bigger city, fairness. They're leading the nation in homicides, 700. We used to have 350. This year, we have 17 year to date. So we've focused on supporting our police department. We have the lowest unemployment in America, highest wage growth. We're also ranked the happiest and the healthiest city in America. So we think we've created a quality of life offering that we can scale to America.
Mr. Mayor, there was a report earlier this summer in Politico that your name was fairly floated around for former President Donald Trump if you did end up becoming nominated. Is being a VP something you're open to?
This is sort of in that same bucket of question that what happens in the next 10 days. Look, I'm running for president because I believe I'm the best person to lead this country. I believe that my track record, my personality, and my vision, when you put it together, Iowans and Americans are going to come to that conclusion if I'm given an opportunity at volume to tell that story. So that's what I'm focused on 100%, and that's how I answer that question.
You mentioned about projecting an image of strength. You felt that President Biden isn't doing that when it comes to the issue of Ukraine. Do you support cutting off U.S. military aid?
And that was a question that was asked. I think it's not quite that simple. First of all, when you talk about projection of weakness, if you're Putin or Xi, who have territorial ambitions, I don't think it gets any better for them in their lifetime to prosecute those territorial ambitions than the way we've projected American weakness in our hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan and even in our own hemisphere. After the July 11th protests in Cuba a couple of years ago, we made all these promises. We didn't execute on any of them. We have no hemispheric strategy. China is all over us in our hemisphere, from fentanyl to spying to military training bases to Belt and Roads initiatives that are strangling South American countries. I mean, we have absolutely no strategy to confront China, and I think that's what's emboldening Putin. I think we need to have a strong American president go in there and try to broker peace immediately. We're seeing Saudi do it. We're seeing China do it, which frankly is worrisome, that China would be brokering peace between the Russians and the Ukrainians. So look, I think when I become president of the United States, I'll confront that issue head on.
What are your agricultural priorities for why should farmers or people from rural areas vote for you?
Well, I think I have a track record of supporting innovation, and I think agriculture, like climate and a variety of other industry verticals, benefit from a pro innovation type of candidate, so that they can continue to produce, continue to have high yields, continue to be profitable, and I think you're going to have somebody that will continue to invest in innovation and creating the kind of innovative approaches to farming and agriculture that not every candidate can deliver on.
Mr. Mayor,
Let me get someone else.
apologies if this has been asked already, but I wanted to get your reaction to the news of special counsel.
Yes, it was. It was just asked. Yeah, so just that, I think there's a perception among Republicans that there's a two-tiered system. So I think this is going to be received well by them, who feel that there has to be a transparent and comprehensive investigation into the president's son's activities. But frankly, for me, I really wish we could be focusing on the future. I don't think that any of that is going to create prosperity for American people. And that's not what my campaign's about. My campaign is not about relitigating what happened yesterday. It's about focusing on what's going to happen tomorrow. And that's what I like to focus on. Thank you, guys.
Earlier you said that you can't gimmick your way to the debate stage.
Yeah.
You can't gimmick your way to the presidency.
Yeah.
What would you say to critics who say the Messi jersey or the gift cards, that those are gimmicks?
You're giving away a Messi jersey? You mean the Messi tickets?
Sorry, that's fine.
Look, I would say that for my, I don't really want to say that my opponents, because I don't think of us really as opponents, but the people who I'm running against right now are national figures for many, many years. I've been a national figure for 60 days. And so, unfortunately for me, they don't change the rules and say, oh, you're sort of new, so you have this different threshold, this different time frame, but I have to compete at the same level. So some of the things that we did, frankly, were based on what other candidates were doing who were well financed and needed to also scale up in a very short period of time. So I think it shows our ingenuity, our ability to scale, and we're going to take that sort of can-do entrepreneurial spirit to this entire country.
Hannah, last question.
One more question. So, with the recent Black History State of the
Yeah.
just passed in Florida, with the wording that some slaves benefited from slavery, what was your reaction to that? And specifically, what is just your thoughts on the direction that education is going in that state?
Look, I think it's unjustifiable to extol the virtues of slavery. I've said that. I think it was a great opportunity for the governor to show, exhibit leadership, to come out and say, look, this was a mistake. This should not have happened. We don't even want to play with something like this and give the perception that we're thinking that something positive came out of slavery, which was something wholly unjustifiable. And it's unfortunate that he didn't. I think it's part of his sort of never back down personality. I think leadership is, every once in a while you do have to admit, I've made mistakes in my life. I've made mistakes as a public official. You got to own them, you admit them, you move on. And people actually find it refreshing oftentimes when you do that. I think it was just a lost opportunity for him. In terms of education, I think when we get it right is when we create competition. We're beginning a tech charter school in Miami that's going to provide a free education for our citizens and an associate's degree at the largest community college in the country. That, to me, is getting it right. I've created 2 scholarship funds that I've raised money in the private sector for kids that are first in their family to go to college or who want to get a STEM degree. That's getting it right in education. For kindergartners, I raise money and put money into a savings account so they can learn financial literacy and their parents can learn financial literacy. That's disruptive education. That's what's going to create prosperity for people in the future. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.